Have you ever looked at a situation and just felt like there was more to the story? Like, why can two people in what looks like the exact same job have totally different experiences? Well, we often just look at the individuals, but what if the real answer is hiding in plain sight, in the groups they're a part of? Today, we're diving into something called multi-level modeling. It's a seriously powerful tool that lets us see this layered reality and finally understand how our teams, our schools, and our communities really shape who we are. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with a classic research puzzle. Then I'll show you a huge trap called the flaw of averages. From there, we'll learn how to think in levels, unpack 3 super important effects, walk through a 4-step investigation, and see just how much richer the answers can be. Let's get into it.
All right, let's kick things off with a puzzle that, on the surface, seems simple, but actually trips up a lot of basic statistics.
Okay, so picture this. You've got 2 employees, let's say Alex and Ben. Both of them have a great relationship with their manager. But for some reason, Alex feels super empowered, ready to take on the world, while Ben just feels fine. What's the deal? Well, if you only look at them as individuals, you're missing the most important part of the story. The teams they're on create a whole different context that can completely change the game. And this puzzle really shines a spotlight on a massive problem in a lot of traditional analysis. I like to call it the flaw of averages. It's a trap, and trust me, it can lead you to some seriously wrong conclusions. Let me give you a metaphor. A traditional analysis is like looking at the 2-dimensional shadow of a sculpture. I mean, you get the basic shape, but you miss all the depth, the texture, the really interesting stuff. It just assumes everyone's independent and ignores the world around them. But multi-level modeling, that's like walking all the way around the sculpture. It sees that people are nested inside groups, and it actually accounts for how that group shapes them. It gives us the real 3-dimensional picture of what's happening. For example, if we just crunched all our numbers together, we might see something like this. On average, a better relationship with your boss, which researchers call leader-member exchange, or LMX, seems to have a decent positive effect on how empowered you feel. Simple enough, right? Good relationship, more empowerment. But this is just the shadow. It's not the sculpture. Because look what happens when we peek inside that average. The real story comes out. When we break it down team by team, suddenly we see that for Team A, that relationship is a huge deal. For Team B, it's kind of weak. And for Team C, it doesn't matter at all. That average we saw before wasn't just simple, it was flat out misleading. The key thing here is that the relationship itself changes depending on the team's context. So this brings us to the solution, to look at this layered, nested world without falling into that flaw of averages trap. We need a tool that's built for the job. We have to start thinking in levels. And this is where multi-level modeling, or MLM, comes into play. You can think of it as putting on 3D glasses for your data. It's a statistical approach designed from the ground up to handle data where individuals are clustered inside of groups. It doesn't push the context to the side. It makes the context a core part of the analysis, letting us look at what's happening at the individual and the group level at the exact same time. And this is what makes it so cool. It lets us bridge that gap between the micro world of individuals and the macro world of groups. It helps us dodge those huge errors we just saw. And, most importantly, it lets us test how a group's context can literally change the rules for the people inside it. So what kind of insights do we actually get from all this? Well, MLM lets us ask and answer 3 really distinct types of questions, and each one digs a little bit deeper. First up, the most direct one, the individual level effect. This is a level 1 question. It's just asking about the link between 2 things for the same person. In our case, does my good relationship with my boss predict my sense of empowerment? It's the foundation, but it's really only the beginning of the story. Now, for the second effect, the cross-level direct effect. This is where it gets more interesting. We're asking if something at the group level, level 2, directly affects a person at level 1. So, does being on a team that has a really positive leadership climate, just the general vibe, does that boost my personal feeling of empowerment no matter what my own relationship with the boss is like? This shows us the environment itself has its own power. And that brings us to the real showstopper, the most powerful insight of all. The cross-level interaction. This isn't about direct hits anymore. This question asks if the group context, that level 2 variable, actually changes the rules of that level 1 relationship. Does a great team climate amplify the effect of a good boss? Does it make that connection even more powerful?
This is how we find the deep answer to why the relationship mattered so much in Team A, but not in Team B.
So how do researchers actually get to these answers? Well, it's not a single button press. It's more like a methodical investigation. You can think of it like a detective building a case, step by step. It's really a detective's process. Step 1, you have to see if there's even a case to solve. Is there any real difference between the teams in the first place? Step 2 is gathering clues. You start adding the individual and group factors into your model. Step 3 is looking for a pattern. Does that boss-employee relationship actually change from one team to the next? And finally, if it does, step 4 is where you solve the mystery. Can the team's climate explain why it changes? And here's the proof in the pudding. That model fit number basically shows how well our theory explains the data. And the key is, lower is better. Just look at how with each step of our investigation, that number goes down. It tells us that every new piece of the puzzle, the individual predictors, the varying relationships, and that final interaction is getting us closer and closer to the truth.
So by following this whole process, we move away from that flat 2D shadow of the averages and into a rich 3D understanding of what's really going on. And the payoff is absolutely huge.
And here's the kicker. At the end of that 4-step investigation, we could say that the team's leadership climate explained 24% of why the link between a good boss and an empowered employee was stronger on some teams than others. That is a massive insight. It tells you that creating a great team-wide climate is one of the best things you can do to make those individual relationships truly powerful.
So, what do you need to remember from all this? First, context is everything. If you want to understand individuals, you have to understand their groups. Second, always be suspicious of a simple average. It usually hides more than it tells you. Third, to get these kinds of rich answers, you need enough groups to study, not just a ton of individuals. And at the end of the day, true understanding really does require thinking in levels.
Look, this isn't just some abstract statistical technique. It's a whole new way of seeing the world around you. Whether you're talking about students in a classroom, employees on a team, or people in a neighborhood, we are all nested in these contexts that are constantly shaping our reality. So the next time you hear a simple, one-size-fits-all explanation for something, just ask yourself, what hidden layers are shaping your world?